Hello everyone and welcome to the latest Scots Whay podcast with Scottish Opera. This is the 8th of these that we've done, and today I'm talking to the music librarian Gordon Grant. Hello Gordon.
Hello, how are you doing?
And I should mention that we're at the Scottish Opera's headquarters in Elmbank Crescent, and in the background you may hear some lovely background music which gives it a genuine touch, I think, absolutely. So the first thing I want to ask you is, I didn't really realise that there was such a role as music librarian for Scottish Opera. So you tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah, well, the music librarian is quite a broad role, but in the most basic terms, any music that's performed at Scottish Opera comes through the library. So it's my job to either buy the parts, hire them, or source them from various other libraries, create them myself in the library, and then tailor them to each individual production that we put on. So
see, already that's much more than I thought that the role maintained. So it's really different from being a librarian where basically you're lending things out. This is more about collating scores and then adapting them to individual performances.
Yes. So as a byproduct of doing this work, we do have quite a lot of books in this room that we're in, so it does look like a library, but that's really as far as being a librarian part of it goes. There's not any stamping of books or telling people to be quiet, really. It's not that kind of librarian.
So where do you actually source the scores from? I mean, and does it depend on what's coming up? And do you keep the ones that you have scored? There's a triple part question.
Well, it absolutely depends on what's coming up, and it depends on the opera, really. I mean, for some operas, you have different editions available. Yeah. So a conductor might prefer a different set of parts to the previous conductor. There might be different versions of that opera. They might have been Don Giovanni, for example. There's the Prague version, which was the first version, right, and then the Vienna version, which came afterwards, that had 2 extra numbers added to it. So again, it's talking to the conductor, the director, to find out what exact version they want to do, and then even within an individual version, they might want to reorder some of the numbers. They might want to cut some of them. They might want to. Some of the singers might want to transpose some of the numbers up to a higher key if they don't feel they're getting enough high notes, or if they're getting too many higher notes, they want to move it down a key or two.
I think this is fascinating, because it's almost like getting to the real secrets in the opera company. Is that I think a lot of people, or maybe it's just myself, would think there's a set. Just like there's often a set text in theatre, yes, there may be improvisations made, but on the whole, people stick to that text. But actually, there's much more fluidity, or there's more fluidity in the opera?
For certain pieces, for example, Tosca that we're doing is a very easy one for me, because it's a standard opera and we've done it so many times. So that involved me going down to the basement and digging up the parts, which we keep down there, and putting them on the music stand. So there wasn't too much involved for me. But usually kind of Mozart operas, earlier ones, Handel, there's a bit more flexibility in it because of I guess because it's not so much a sort of through opera that the Puccini is, where it's it's all in one act.
It's more like a piece of theatre.
It's more like you have an aria, then a little bit of recit or dialogue or something, and then another aria. So there's more scope there to move things about, and directors have different ideas how to interpret it.
But as far as I understand it, the current Tosca that's on is a reprisal of one which Scottish Opera had done previously.
Yes, so it premiered in 1980, and we've been using the same orchestral parts since then, or even before, actually. I don't really know how old they are. So the orchestra have played these parts at least 100 times. So it's all their markings that are in the parts, and so they're very comfortable with them just being put out on the music stands in the pit, ready for them to start playing from.
So when an opera company does an opera, is it always written down? I mean, is it there for other people to use or to get?
So where we can, we always buy the parts so that they're ours and we keep them for a record. It's more complicated when we do more modern work, such as Nixon in China that we're doing next, which is still in copyright. And
of course.
a piece remains in copyright until 70 years after both the composer and the librettist have died. And that means that you can only hire them. And so there's a lot more restrictions on what we can do with. We can't radically alter the music without the composer's permission or the publisher's permission.
That's fascinating. So so even when you say for the older ones, even when you buy the score in, then you can sit down, I presume, collaborating with many other areas in the company, and say, this is how we're going to adapt this or change this.
So initially I have to sit down with the or have a conversation with the conductor and the director, or that information is fed to me of the exact version that we're doing. And then when I have that information, I need to create several different types of scores, really. So we have the full score, which is every single orchestral line, so all the instruments are on the one page with the vocal lines, and that's what the conductor would use. So they've got every information of every line in front of them. We also have the vocal score, which the singers use, which are the vocal lines, and then all the instrumental lines are condensed into a piano part. So it makes it much easier for them to work from, and it's also what the repetiteurs use in rehearsals to play from, what stage management use to read in their scores, and generally what everyone works from. It's a kind of shorthand score.
So many people get hands on this because it has to kind of go round, it has to be the same for everyone. Everyone has to know. So for instance, in the role of the stage manager, they have to know when the changes are made because it changes when people will have to be on stage. Things like that.
The other thing that we need to make sure is consistent across all the parts are how we navigate through the score. So some scores have bar numbers. So the start of each line, you have the bar numbers are counted. Some scores don't have those, but have figure numbers, so they'll be labelled A, B, C at kind of regular intervals throughout the score. And you need to be careful that everyone's working from the same edition, because for Tosca, for example, there's a couple of different editions, some of which have bar numbers, some of which have figure numbers. So if we get to rehearsal and we go from figure Z and singers don't have that, then there's a lot of scrambling around to try and work out where you both are.
So is that kind of one of your responsibilities, really? Because if another version that, I know how my bookshelves are. Sometimes the wrong thing gets in the wrong place, and then someone doesn't realise that they've got a different edition.
So part of my job is right when the opera is first planned, is confirming what edition that the singers will be using, whether we'll be provided, if it's a specific edition that we are creating in the library, we need to make sure that the singers know that and don't start learning a different version. They might have extra music in it or music in the wrong place. So
a completely different opera.
A completely different opera. A different opera with the same name. So yes, it's a long process, and we start working on shows right as soon as they're planned. So at the moment, I'm doing work on shows for next year, for the following year.
Wow.
And just getting the groundwork in place for those. So,
but with something that's going on just now, we'll come on to another role that you do in a minute, but you still have to be involved with the current as well as thinking about what's going ahead.
Yeah, so I kind of think of it in sort of 3 time zones. That I work on the show that we're doing immediately. So, for example, at the moment I'm working on Iris, which is a concert that we're doing next couple of weeks. At the same time, I'm working on shows that are coming up for the rest of the season into next season, and then also we're doing sort of budgeting work and preparatory work for even further ahead. So right into, I think we're working on stuff up to 2021 at the moment.
Wow.
But yes, for the shows that we're working on at the moment, I go to all of the orchestra rehearsals until they have played through everything once, and I'm on hand just to make sure that all the parts are okay, there's no problems. So things that usually come up are page turns, where the players don't have enough time to turn the page before they play again.
Explain, because I know people have always, that's something that you see if you go to a concert or the opera, is that when the page turns, and if that's at the wrong or a difficult place.
Yeah. So sometimes they normally obviously try and put the page turns where the players aren't playing.
Yeah, we're taking a breath or whatever.
But parts that are maybe less well thought out don't always put them in the best place. So
that's really tricky.
I'll get a sort of hand appearing in the middle of the rehearsal, and I need to go and sort it out quickly. So there's usually lots of photocopying involved, and sort of Blue Peter sticky tape and and making sort of folds and things like that. So
what it looks like by the end of the process is very different to what it's like at the beginning.
Yeah. And changes crop up in rehearsals, and that they need to be in place for the next rehearsal. So up until the opening night, really, changes are taking place. And
you said about going down to the basement to get the Tosca. Is everything then catalogued and kept for possible future reference?
Yes. So we try and keep as much as we can, just in case the show is revived, and we have parts going right back to the start of Scottish Opera. Really,
it's a nice library to have in that sense.
And we have we're lucky to have a lot of Alexander Gibson's scores, who's the founder of Scottish Opera. So his widow donated all of his personal scores to us, which are hidden away in a safe place. So that's interesting to see exactly what, if a conductor's doing Tosca, for example, they can go back and see how he did it.
So if they say we're going to do something, and Scottish Opera have never done this before, in fact it's rarely been done, something quite rare, how does, is that an exciting proposition?
It is exciting. I suppose there's two different routes. For a rare opera, there's a little bit of investigation work to find out what editions are available and how we would source these parts. But I guess over the past couple of years we've had operas that no one has done before because we've commissioned them and they're newly written, so that's quite exciting to create parts ourselves in the library from what the composer is directly giving to us.
Wow.
So that's exciting to create a work that's never been heard before.
So how did you come to this job? What's the background?
So I think if you did a poll of opera librarians, there's not very many of us in the country, but I think if you asked all of us, none of us would say that this was a career that we expected to end up in. Then most of us have fallen into it through some sort of sideways route. I suppose when I left school, I was good at music all through school, but when I was at the point of choosing what university course to do, I knew I didn't want to be a music teacher, and I knew I probably was not ever going to end up playing in an orchestra. So at that point I was naive enough to not know what the point of doing a music degree would be. So I decided to do something completely different and did forensic chemistry.
Wow. If you'd asked me to guess, I would never.
So it's something completely unrelated, and I did that for a year and a half at Strathclyde, and while I was there, my violin teacher was doing this job. They were the music librarian at Scottish Opera and had asked me to come in and do some little bits and pieces, do some photocopying, and I absolutely loved it. And I I probably should say this, but I missed quite a lot of classes at university and came and worked here instead because it was much more interesting, and eventually decided that I should probably be doing a music degree.
That's one of the healthier reasons for bunking off university classes.
Yeah. So I worked here solidly for about a year, and it was a proper apprenticeship, really.
Yeah.
It was really good, learning it from the ground up, really. And then I went down to Leeds and did a music degree there for 3 years. And then when I came back here, with timings and things working out, I did a few other jobs at Scottish Opera, and then my predecessor moved elsewhere, and they asked me to cover the job because I was the only person that had worked in the library.
With it,
So I initially covered it for 2 months while they were interviewing for the job, and then I've never left, really. I interviewed and got the job.
Fantastic.
So that was in 2010, so I've been here 9 years, coming up to 10 years. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. So we mentioned briefly that you do have another role, and I'm particularly interested in this, and that's to do with what's called the supertitles.
Yes, the supertitles. So those are the words that you see appearing above the stage when the opera is in a different language, whether it's in Italian or German, or even in English. We still
Yes, it happens, doesn't it? Yeah.
Subtitles.
Because when I first, I worked in subtitling for television for a while, when I first went to opera and saw these, I immediately thought this is an accessibility issue, so that people are able to see the subtitles for similar reasons to they do in television, and I thought, no, that can't be right. And then, of course, you realise that there's translation involved, and that's maybe the main reason that they started. Has it been happening for a long time, or is it a recent thing?
I think it was the 80s that they started appearing. I've never. I mean, it was common right up until then to go and see the opera in a different language and have a written synopsis in front of you. But apart from that, not really have a clue what was going on and who was saying what. I've never experienced that, and I can't really imagine what it would be like. But initially it started for providing translations for operas in other languages, and for about the past 10-15 years we've really found a benefit in surtitling English operas as well.
And are these adapted in a similar, we're talking about how the score's adapted and how the music's adapted, and are the supertitles, are they adapted as well?
Yeah, so part of my job is to find a translation that the director feels fits with his production. And once we've done that, then I create a cueing score, which is the vocal score that I talked about, where the text is broken up into slides of text that fit up on the screen, and that are there for a period that lets you read them in time, but also you need to be careful that you're not giving too much information away, that you're not putting up the whole storyline in one slide, or giving away punchlines, or taking away dramatic moments from the singers.
Because I feel that there's a rhythm to them as well, which kind of fits what's happening on stage. Yeah. It's not just like, say, reading, this person did this. There's the kind of, for want of a better word, the poetry of them that matches the music.
So a lot of work goes into them. So I'm at all the theatre rehearsals, and edit the speed at which they appear, which they fade in and fade out. So if it's a long, slow, sad aria, that they're not going to sort of come blasting up at you, that they sort of fade in sympathetically with what's happening on stage. And there a lot of work actually goes into if you're titling something in English, for example, when we did the Magic Flute. That the jokes are appearing at the right time. Of course. Things with Gilbert and Sullivan are really hard to surtitle because everything are in rhyming couplets, and the punchline comes at the end of the couplet. if you put the whole thing up immediately, then the audience laugh before the singers got to the joke,
which would be off-putting at the very least for the
so
people.
A lot of work goes into delaying putting up the line until the right moment, getting a balance right of getting the allowing the audience to read the whhole thing, but not giving away the joke at the
that must be really difficult, and things that play on words, which that's fascinating. And are you or whoever is looking after them that night, because it's more than one person, isn't it? There's a few people.
So it's mainly myself who operates them on during the performance. So a lot of people actually think that we press a button at the start of a show and
go away
and have a cup of tea, and that it just runs as itself like a video or something. But we actually follow the music and have to press.
So you're queuing as you go along.
So we're queuing it in time with the singers, every show is different. So it
wouldn't take much for something to be out of sync, would it?
Some nights the audiences applaud in a certain place, other nights they don't, and singers like to alter their performance each night, and for it to be an individual performance. So a lot of it is following the music, but a lot of it is I sit at the back of the stalls, so I've got a good view of the stage, and a lot of it is going on looking at the singers, looking at I look at a lot of their breathing to kind of anticipate where they're going to come in.
So you must have a real great understanding of everything that's going on stage in a way, because you're seeing it sounds like every night.
Yeah.
And you are watching how the singers are going. You know how the music obviously is going because you've helped to work on that.
Yeah, it's a really nice job actually, because you're seeing kind of the show being created from lots of different angles. Mm-hmm. So I see the orchestra putting their part together, and that's one of my favourite parts of my job actually, is with sitting in the orchestra rehearsals, because it's this amazing orchestra with a conductor and me sitting at a little table behind them, so it's like hugely powerful wall of sound coming straight at you, which is amazing, and then also seeing the technical rehearsals coming together. So the first technical rehearsals I go to are when they're putting the staging together. So it's only a piano playing in the pit with the singers, and that's them getting used to their costumes and the moving scenery and things. So seeing it from that angle, and then seeing it everything come together is really interesting.
And so really you're seeing every opera from the very, very beginning, because that's when the score's decided and which version is going to be, right to the curtain call on the last one.
Yeah, I think, and obviously seeing every performance.
Yeah,
I think my record is I think I saw the Mikado 30, 35, 36 times.
And that is dedication.
That was a proper West End production schedule, so that was 8 shows a week, 3 matinees, and that was interesting. You kind of go beyond finding it funny, and then come through the other sides, and it starts being funny again.
It's like the repetition of comedy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. And do you get to sometimes give notes of something that's happened maybe on a performance, and you say, oh, maybe this could change, or is that not something that you would get involved in?
That's not really my role.
Right, okay.
I mean, I am in quite a good position.
I just think because it sounds like if you see so many, then something jumps out.
Yeah. Where I'm sitting, actually, the assistant director often sits beside me for the performances, because it is a good vantage point to spot anything. And but no, I don't comment on anything like that.
So, I'm tempted to ask you, when do you actually rest? Because obviously, as we know, the weekends can be the busiest time for, you've got matinee performances and evening performances.
Yeah.
And all of those things.
Well, luckily Scottish Opera works in, they've only got one show on at a time. So,
I suppose.
There usually is some downtime in between different shows.
And we've spoken on previous podcasts about the touring shows and the educational shows and things like that. And are you involved with those as well?
So for the main skill shows, obviously I'm at every performance, so I go out on tour with them. So I've just been up to Inverness with Tosca in Aberdeen, and the Edinburgh run starts today actually. So I'll be going through to Edinburgh later today. I think we've got 4 or 5 shows through there over 2 weeks. But the education shows, yes, it's every piece of music, as I said, comes through the library. So the education shows we're involved with. The small scale touring opera highlights that I work with our head of music, Derek Clark. So he comes up with normally a wonderful program of lesser known pieces that are very
so do you have the
interesting to source. So there's a bit of investigation work normally goes into that. For some of the more obscure things, and often,
maybe not often, but there are shows which incorporate music which is not standard opera. I was thinking about the Bard and the Mozart town recently, which had Burns songs and things like that.
Yeah, well, the music director on that show was great and sort of did her own arrangements for that. So that was not as difficult as it could be for me, because we have someone great working on it that provides us with all the music for that. But yeah, there are shows like our Bohème that we did a few years ago. It starts with 2 Josephine Baker songs, which involved quite a lot of investigation work to track down the sheet music for, and I ended up sadly not in person, but having to go to the National Archives of France to get the original manuscripts from their archives, and go through the various routes to get permission to perform these. So it's, there are some digging work involved to find all these more obscure pieces.
So there's always kind of something new to be working on. Something new. Well, this has been one of the most interesting chats I've had in a long time, because I just had no idea what we were going to discuss. And it just gives such a great insight into not just your job, but what happens in Scottish opera. So, Gordon, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And we'll be back soon with someone else from Scottish Opera. Cheers.